Hey fantasy fans, it's Dan here with TreeBeard Book Reviews, and today finally coming out with my reviews of Gardens of the Moon, Book 1 in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back. So glad you could be here for this review. So this book I read in the month of January. Really excited to talk about it. You know, again, if you guys like the channel, you want to support me, please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to be doing a spoiler-free review of this. Kind of lay it out, like, why you should read Malazan, or what I liked about this book. First of all, I'm going to talk about basic kind of plot summary. I don't want to spoil anything because you guys should read this. It's really good. And I just want to say, you know, what I liked, what I didn't like, or what I didn't care for in some things. And what's the general story, and should you read it? So I'm going to try to be spoiler free as I can, guys. So let's start breaking down the plot of Malazan Book of the Fallen, or the Gardens of the Moon Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is one of those books where it really just kind of throws you into the mix right from like the word go. The prologue, you have no real idea what's going on in the prologue. It's kind of more set up for, it gets referenced a little bit later on. The prologue, it's one of those that might be worth reading it, you know, once you finish the book again to kind of see what's happening. But you kind of get introduced to your main character of Captain Perrin. But he's not a captain yet, he's a child at this point in the book. So you get introduced to Perrin, and then it jumps into a big battle. So then it throws you right in, and you're gonna meet one of the high mages, which is Tattersail. She's a great character. You're going to meet the Bridge Burner, so you're going to meet like Whiskey Jack, Corporal Callan, Quick Ben, Sorry. So it jumps you. This book doesn't stop at the beginning. It jumps you right into this big battle where the forces of Malazan are attacking the city of Pale. And you also see another entity that shows up is Moonspawn, which is led by Animander Rake. He's one of the Tista Ande. It's like one of these ancient race. Like they were pretty much formed out of darkness, and they control darkness as their warren. I'm going to talk about warrens and stuff later, but essentially this is where it kind of jumps in. You know, Malazan forces, so Whiskey Jack, Tattersail are assaulting Pale. Pale is, you know, being defended by its own defenders, and the Moonspawn is helping Pale hold back the Malazan Empire. Eventually, you know, the battle ensues, and the Malazan Empire beats Pale, but at great losses. So that is really where you kind of start out. But then there's also these other things kind of happening where this world that you're in is extremely interesting. There's these gods, and they're interventionist gods, which I really love in this type of series. So one of the things I love is it's great to have gods in series, but if they don't do anything, what's the point of them? In this book, it's like, I have all these cool gods, and they are going to be getting their fingers in everything. They're going to be twisting humans. They're going to be killing humans. They're going to be, you know, affecting the world that they live in, which is great. So you get introduced to a few gods. You get introduced to like Hood, who's like the god of death. Shadow, I think it's Shadow Throne, and his minion like Cotillion, the Rope. You also meet Opon, which is a twin luck god. They're like a brother-sister pair, and they're great. And they're also, all these gods are intervening, and they're meddling with the humans and trying to influence them and just achieve their own ends, which I loved. I love interventionist gods, so it's really good with that. So these gods are intervening in the plot. And so the plot kind of really kicks off in the beginning, though, with a god, Shadow Throne, intervening, him and Cotillion, by intervening against a character named Sorry. So she's a young girl. She gets kind of, she gets brought, like she's been influenced. And her story is, you know, going to be progressing with the Bridge Burners. So very interesting there. And then you have Opon, who are intervening again with the Bridge Burners, but with a different character, with Captain Perrin. So it's really good, guys. It's such an amazing story, to be honest. I guess I'm going to tell you about some of the things I really liked. Is you know, there's two different settings in this book, right? The first setting, and the first plot point is you're going to be with like the Bridge Burners and like Tattersail. or then you're going to be over in Darujistan, or Darujistan, I believe it's called, with these other set of characters, but they're both super interesting. So the characters with Whiskey Jack, Tattersail, like Quick Ben, they're really interesting, and Captain Perrin, you really enjoy them. But then you get over to Darujistan, and you meet characters like Krupe, Crocus. Yeah, there's some really great characters over there. Probably the guys over in Darujistan, they weren't as fleshed out as maybe Perrin and Tattersail were, and like Whiskey Jack and Quick Ben. But there's enough there to keep you interested and keep you reading. So I really like what he did was where Steven Erikson, he broke the book down into 7 books. So it flips back between like Darujistan and like the Malazan forces. So you kind of you really starting to see both sides, because eventually like the Malazan Empire, after they've conquered Pale, they're going to start moving on to Darujistan. And so that means, you know, you're kind of seeing both sides of the war, both sides of the conflict, and I really like that. And then there's, like I said, there's this running theme, like on this vein of tension where these gods are intervening and, you know, trying to gain traction and influence the humans to seek their own ends. So it's really good, really, really interesting, guys. So one of the things I will say about Steven Erikson's writing is it's so digestible. There's one thing I will say, like, even though you're thrown right in and you don't really have any idea what's going on, he writes so clearly and so effortlessly that you just can't help. I couldn't help but keep going on. I really enjoyed the story. Like, just every kind of like POV I was with, I just felt engaged and interested. And there's this other character who you don't know too much about, but whenever he's on set or in screen and when you're reading, he's a scene stealer. He takes over just your whole attention, and that character is Animander Rake. He's one of the Tista Ande. He just sounds amazing. Like I think he's like 40,000 years old. He's a really cool character. I'm not going to spoil too much about him, but like he is this crazy sword. That is a warren, which warrens are like these hotbeds of magic. Where from what I understood, and like I said, I've only read the first book, so I don't know too much. Is the warrens are like places of power that magic users can tap into, and based on the type of warren they tap into or they have access to, they can then use that magic. So it's really good. And so his sword is essentially like a purgatory. So when he kills someone with that sword, they get sucked into it and they just get put into like a purgatory warren, which is pretty sick. But yeah, Animander Rake, he's just a scene stealer in this whole book, where he sounds cool, everything he does is cool, all of his dialogue is cool, and he's a super interesting character. And like, you think he's the bad guy at first, but he's not a bad guy. He's just really, he's kind of morally gray because he's just trying to look after his own people, right? So he's he's not the bad guy in his own story, kind of thing. And that's what I really liked about this book, is nobody's a bad guy. Like, they're all kind of trying to seek, reach their own aims. And there's just a lot of really good characters. Like, Animander Rake was a great character. Krupe was a great character. He was in Darujistan. He was like this kind of like really plump, fat mage who just loved food, and but he was like really witty and very clever, and he was almost very like Varys from like Game of Thrones, where he was kind of playing 3D chess with everyone, had his like spider webs everywhere, and he was manipulating people. Really liked Krupe, very clever. Just the way Erikson wrote Krupe, extremely clever. Just his language. And, Krupe felt super realized. Like, he felt like, he had these motivations. He had this distinct personality. Loved Krupe. Some of the other characters in Darujistan, I didn't care for too much. Like, Crocus, he was okay. He was a young kid. He's just, he's a thief, and he's kind of making his way. And he's, being influenced by a god, but you don't know which one, like, yet. So there's just these other characters. I can't remember. There's, like, this other, like, I think he was like an assassin. Didn't really care about him too much. He was okay. He had a bit of a, not a Deus Ex Machina, but like he did something right at the end of the book. I'm like, I don't know if I believe that. But other than that, it was pretty fine. But then you meet like, with Captain Perrin and Tattersail, and the other side of the coin, they were very interesting. Tattersail I loved. Such a great character. So interesting. Her dialogue was so good. She's a thick girl. She's just one of those characters you immediately attach to her. You're already in sympathy with all of her all of her motivations. Just loved his writing with Tattersail. Same with kind of Captain Perrin. He was a little bit one-note-ish for me, but he kind of grew on me as the book went on, and I really enjoyed Captain Perrin in the end. So yeah, so great characters. The plot, again, I love the plot. I love the switching back and forth from Darujhistan and what's going on with the Malazan forces. I love the magic that was going on with these warrens, even though I don't fully understand them. They felt unique. They felt cool. They felt powerful. They felt like effective in the world. And magic is one of those things that seems scary in this universe, and you should be scared around any magic user. So I really like that. It made magic feel magical. I love the interventionist gods. I love, like I said, I just love gods that kind of get their hands in the, get their hands dirty, right? Because they have stakes. They have, and like the gods aren't immortal as you know them, and they're stakes for them, but they are ultimately trying to achieve their own goals. So I love that. I loved like Shadow Throne and then like his Hounds of Hell, which are great. They were really cool. They were really scary. I really liked that. So yeah, the gods were great. Just the whole setting. There's so much about this book that I enjoy, and I highly recommend it. And I know I said Malazan in my series talking about if you're new to fantasy, you shouldn't really start here, and I still would stick by that. It's probably not your first series you want to jump into, because when you first jump in, you don't know what's going on. You're kind of thrown right into the mix. You don't know how the magic works. You're kind of piecing it all together as you're reading. So like the first 100 pages, you're kind of a little lost. You're kind of a little bit afloat, but the writing is so engaging, the story is so engaging that you're just like, I'm in it. I'm in for it. And that's how I felt. Like after the first 100 pages, I couldn't put the book down, guys. Like honestly, I think I read it as my buddy read this with Baron over at Your Brain on Books. I just loved it. I loved every part of this book for me. There are some weaker parts with like in Darujhistan, and like there are some little weaker characters there, and that's mainly just probably because it's the first book in a 10-book series, so they still need some fleshing out, and they might grow on me later. But everything that happened in this book I enjoyed, and my overall rating for this is a 4.6. So very strong, very high. And I know I tend to rate books a little high, but you know what? Life's too short to read bad books. Really, guys. Like I have a lot of books that I need to read still behind me, and a lot of books that in those massive book hauls I need to read. And you know what? Like I said, life's too short to read bad books, and I'm only going to read good books. Try to read good books. I read a bad book last month, but that happens, right? It was Red Rising. There'll be a review coming out for that. So again, guys, loved Malazan. Going to be continuing this series. I probably won't be reading Deadhouse Gates, probably not till March, I want to say, because I have a lot of reads that I want to get through in February. So if you guys want to stick around for those reviews and you like the channel, please again like, comment, and subscribe. And so that was my review of Gardens of the Moon. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.